today I'm going to do a quick tutorial on how to stitch these super cute Easter bunnies on a wooden block. I have a couple of different styles that I'll link to in the comments below, and these will look adorable on any mantle or side table or wherever you want all throughout your house. And you can customize them with any fabric that you want and any ribbon and little pom-pom for the tail. So the first thing we're going to do is talk about the supplies that you need. So you're going to need 2 pieces of fabric, one for the front and one for the back, and you want them to be about the size of your hoop that you're going to use. And I have prepared my fabric with Heat and Bond Light on the back of both of them. Make sure before you stitch that you remove the paper background. You don't want the paper when you stitch it, so we'll remove that in a minute. You'll also need a piece of stabilizer, and my recommendation is for this, you want to go the thicker you can, the better. We want this to be somewhat kind of firm at the end, and so having thick cutaway stabilizer is best. When I stitched mine, I added a layer of this polyfill quilt batting, and I suggest that you make this slightly smaller than your fabric, so it will go underneath the top piece of fabric. You will need a wooden block. I am using the 8x8 design, and this is a 1.5 inch wooden block that I found on Amazon. I drilled a hole in it, which you'll see in a minute. You also want a piece of wire that's going to go inside. This one is 18 gauge. You could probably do 16 or 20, but I went with 18, and you can see it's nice and firm. It's not going to bend. It's going to hold those bunnies up. I added a little bit of a ribbon around the bunny's neck, and of course a cute little pom-pom tail. Some other general supplies that we'll need. My drill is missing, but we have a drill, and oh, here it is. It's right on the table over here. So there's a drill that you'll need to drill the hole in the block. You'll need an iron. I have a little mini iron that I use for this project. You'll need some scissors. Depending on what size and length wire you get, you may need a wire cutter to trim the wire down to about 6 inches. I used some fabric glue. I used a glue gun, which I don't have here, and then I used a little bit of this temporary adhesive spray. These aren't all completely necessary, but they're what I use to create this project. So let's get started. Okay, we're ready for the first step. I've got my stabilizer hooped and my hoop loaded on my machine and my design loaded on the machine. The very first step is going to be a placement stitch. Now that we have our placement line, we are ready to add our fabric to the hoop. So here are the 2 pieces of fabric that I had Heat and Bond Light on. So we're just going to pull off the Heat and Bond Light on both sides. And then one of these pieces of fabric is going to go on the bottom side of the hoop. So I'm going to pull my hoop off of my machine. I'm going to turn it upside down. This is the bottom side of the hoop. I am going to use my temporary adhesive spray, and I have this box here. I usually do this in a bathroom right around the corner, but I have a box here just so I don't get spray on my table. So I'm just going to give it just a quick, you don't need much, just a little bit of spray on the back. And I'll move my hoop back over, and I can see, I should have done a darker color on the placement stitch, but I can see my placement stitch. So I'm going to make sure that my fabric covers the full placement stitch. Then I like to flip it over and just give it a nice little smooth patting to make sure that all that spray is adhering. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is also make sure that I'm covering my placement stitch. I am going to add my piece of batting, and then I'm going to add my other piece of fabric. And both of these pieces are larger than the placement stitch, so I know we're going to cover it all. So now I'm going to go back to my machine and load my hoop. Okay, this is step 2 of the design, and it's just going to do a tack down stitch to make sure that we get all of these pieces nice and tacked down together. The next step for this design, today we're stitching the smooth outline bunny. There's also a squiggly version bunny, But today for the smooth, there's gonna be a bean stitch that's gonna go all the way around. And I have chosen to do the outline in a pink, hoping to pick up on some of these pink flowers and make the outline pop a little bit. Only 2 steps left and then you're done with the stitching. This is a super quick project. For this 8x8 hoop design, it's only 1,600 stitches, so you can really crank these out. They're very fun and quick and easy to do. So the last 2 steps is going to stitch the nose and the eye, and then we'll pull it off of the machine and do the rest of our steps over at the table. Okay, so we're done with the stitching. You can see how much puffiness that little layer of polyfill batting really adds. And so now we're going to pull our design out of the hoop, and we will be ready to cut out the bunny. So my first go around, since it's a pretty big bunny, I just like to use some good big fabric scissors, but you can come back and do some of the details with a smaller scissor if you want to. So the next step that I like to do is to iron the edges down. Now I made a mistake on my first round of this, and I went ahead and ironed the whole bunny. And do you know what that did to the polyfill? It flattened it, and you couldn't tell that there was polyfill in there anymore. So I'm gonna use my mini iron for this, and we'll go over in just a second, and I'm gonna iron just along the outlines to try to really kind of adhere these edges together. You've got Heat and Bond Light on there, so it shouldn't fray too much, but I also want to just adhere the pieces together just to give it a nice, clean, crisp look. So one more important note on the ironing, keep in mind that you're going to want this metal rod to go up into the center. And if you iron that down, there will be no place for the metal rod to go in. So even if you don't have the polyfill in there, if you decided to skip using the polyfill, make sure that you don't iron in the middle of the bunny so that the metal rod has somewhere to go inside. Okay, back to ironing. Before we add our bunny to our block, we want to decorate him just a little bit. So I've got a piece of ribbon here. It's probably about 1 foot long. And so I just kind of do a double knot. I'm doing it upside down for the video, so I'm not sure how it's going to turn out, but we'll give it a shot. And so there's my knot. And what I kind of did on some of these was I didn't like that knot look, and so I just kind of would loop it around, and we'll use a little bit of glue gun to just hold it in place where we want it. Okay? So once you get the, see, I'm gonna loop that one around too, and then that gives kind of a nice little finished look on top as opposed to just the knot. I brought over my glue gun. This is really old school vintage glue gun stand that I have to brag on. My granddad made it for my grandmother years ago, and it's got tons of caked on glue, but I love it that way, so it always does the job. So it is warmed up and ready to go. I'm just gonna add a little dot there, a little dot there, and then one more underneath, connecting the bow to the fabric. Okay, and then the last piece of the glue gun is gonna be for your tail. So I'm gonna add a little glue down here and pop on the pom-pom Look how cute. I think that adds so much. I love giving the little three-dimensional look to this bunny. And I am just gonna give these little edges just a little angle. Oh. Let's see, give this one just a little bit of an angle. I think I need to sharpen my scissors. Okay, so now we are ready to attach it to the wooden block. Okay, so I already have a pre-drilled hole, but all you do is get a drill bit that is as close to the size of your wire as you can find, and you just want to drill about 1 inch or 2 down into the hole. And then once you do that, you just get your wire. Mine's about 6 inches long, and you just shove it down in there as far as it can go. My wire was a little crooked, so once I got it in there, well, it just depends on which way you're looking at it. You know, it's bendable. This 18 gauge wire is bendable, so you can just straighten it up. So now we're ready to put the wire into the bunny. Now, let me show you what happens if we don't use the fabric glue. If you don't use the fabric glue, your bunny will spin around. If you use the fabric glue, he'll stay in place. See how he's not spinning? So what I did for the fabric glue, I have, you know, the tip of mine is open, and you could easily just get a paintbrush and paint some of this on, but I would take my metal rod and I just stuck it down into the glue bottle. I'm kind of low on this bottle, so I did squeeze some of the glue to get it to come up to the tip, and you can see that the glue is coming out onto the metal rod. And then you are just going to stick that metal rod into your bunny. You have to find the sweet spot, but once it gets going, it goes on just fine. So then you bring it down until you have about the height that you want, and then I like to just give it a little squeeze and just make sure that the glue on that rod is kind of grabbing onto some of the polyfill or some of the fabric. And I let these that I did yesterday just dry overnight, and they're good to go. So you can see how quick and easy this wooden block bunny is, and there are just so many possibilities with the different fabrics. I have one other idea that I'm hoping to get to soon as well, and that's going to be to create a family of bunnies that kind of matches my family. So I think that would be super fun to offer to your clients, but also to do for yourself. So stay tuned for that, and let me know if you have any questions, and be sure to share some pictures in our Facebook fans group of your bunnies once you get them stitched. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.